And when they each take a turn in the right appropriate moments, the healthy amount of fear and disgust and anger, sadness and joy all work together, which makes a happy, healthy individual be able to respond to situations in the correct way, right? It's okay to be angry or afraid when that's cool. However, when that balance is thrown off, and that can happen by the external events, self-involved events, genetic or medical reasons, our bodies crave to get a balance back. So when one or two or three emotions take over the other ones, that becomes your permanent way of feeling situations. So the islands that we're breaking down here are actually programmed, and it is portrayed correctly, right? Whatever emotions that are in control, that's the islands of personality for. And those islands will be permanent, depending on how you wire those emotions. So in here where sadness and joy are left, right, not activate or have the islands that are actually driven by that emotion. So, what joy really looks like. It would be really cool if we had a little character with blue hair, then a control center, and each take turn to drive our everyday life, right? So maybe not as cute, but don't glaze over yet. Because here's the thing. At some point, and I'm going to ask you to stand up again, and this is just really to get us an idea of what if this is really actually relevant or not. This little pathway is what joy actually means to us in our bodies. When you experience something, and taken from younger age, when you're first taken to the zoo, or your parents come home, and you get really excited because you see a really cute animal doing something, right? When you get excited, the pathway that fires makes you feel joy, and you're happy. And the way that our bodies are designed, the more often you feel a feeling, the more permanent that pathway becomes. So if you don't use that pathway anymore, it gets permanently turned off. So what happens is when the joy pathway is turned off, we look for an alternative to fill it in, right? Because it's a normal craving that we want to have. We want to fill the void, and we want to feel happy, even if it's temporary or it's not a long-term way to do it. So I'm going to ask you to be honest here, right? So I'm going to have you stand up a couple of times. So first, sort of set. If you or you know someone who shops compulsively to feel better, who is obsessed with social media, has taken drugs of any kind in order to fill the void at any point, stand up. If you or you know someone at any point has used that to fill the void, stand up. Okay? Sit down, and then one more time. That's reality. If you or you know someone at any point has cut themselves, has been sexually active, has or had an eating disorder or drink alcohol in order to fill the void, stand up. At any point. Alright, thank you. Alright? So, again, that is reality at some point for probably most all of us, either us or someone we know of. And so here's what happens, so just bear with me for sort of 20 seconds, okay, don't worry about it. So joy looks like this. When there's an event, right, when you're experiencing something, that little purple neuron, right, the top one, gets fired, and you have an impulse, right, you have a message. It travels down to the little sausage-like looking little tail towards a blue neuron, right? And when they meet at the bottom right, the little red dots, right, that are in the bubbles, those are neurotransmitters, or dopamine. Now, in a normal joy pathway that's healthy, two of those bubbles burst, as shown. The red dots get released in the right amount, and then they activate the blue neuron correctly. So when those two neurons fire together, and communicate more than one time, they get wired. Right? So they fire together, they wire together. And that's the pathway they can use. So when you learn a new thing, and you win a game, right, or you have a family event that's really exciting, that pathway fires and becomes permanent. When you don't use or abuse this pathway, those red dots and that sequence get completely off balance, and it can actually be permanent. So when the islands were breaking in Byron's head, this is the pathway that was now being disrupted. Right? So what happens is that the normal feelings that you used to be able to feel, you can't anymore. Now, here's a sort of a scary, such a misconception too. A lot of times, right, teenagers thought of to be really resilient, they can bounce back, they can try different things, and it's fine, it's cool. They can learn things a lot faster than adults, right? They can adapt to situations. That is true. The reason is that pathway up until you are 25 is not wired, meaning you can create whatever pathways you want. So you can try a lot of different things. However, once one of those pathways gets wired, that becomes permanent for the rest of your life. Right? So once they fuse, it's really, really hard to undo it. So depending on how you create this pathway in a healthy way or not healthy way, it can actually permanently change the way that you live the rest of your life and the decisions that you make. So, why am I here talking about this? I think a lot of time when we hear sort of chapters about alcohol or drug use, it's, at least in my experience, sort of somebody who experienced something traumatic, they had a bad car accident that, people died, or they had a really bad drug problems and lost a lot of family relationship, and then somehow saw the light, got better, and now wants to prevent other people from doing it. And that's really great and powerful, but for me, that's a little hard to relate to, because that seems a pretty much an extreme case, or so to speak. We know it happens. But I can't really relate to that. So I'm not here to tell you that I have a drug and alcohol story or I had an experience, but I certainly felt like Riley many times. So I'm going to tell you sort of why I didn't turn into that, and I don't have a redemption story. And it might be a little different than you think it is. I moved 6 times before I was 16, so certainly had many rowdy moments where I wanted to just get home. I went to 3 different high schools, had to restart friendships all along. So I definitely had plenty of opportunities to feel like I really don't have a joy in my life. My parents had a really abusive relationship. I have no siblings, I have no aunts and uncles, so it was a little hard to figure that out. Also, I wouldn't say that I just had like really great moral standards and thought I was just a good kid, and then because somebody told me that those things are bad, so I shouldn't do it. None of those things are really true. I do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do it, so it's not like I follow somebody's order. So, what is it for me that actually made me look for alternative ways to find joys that are not short-term? And here's a real reason. It's kind of vague, right? It's fear of missing out. Now, that might seem a little backwards, because a lot of times we actually do those things, right? We drink, we do drugs, we do things, a lot of times for those social events. Right? It is peer pressure, it's people around you doing it. So fear of missing out would be really sort of participating. You want to be part of the friend group. Right? So for me, fear of missing out was actually the opposite, because it's a little bigger than that. Fear of missing out, for me, was not in the friend group at that point, but actually for long-term, the rest of my life. I always asked a lot of questions, even in high school, so I knew sort of the bigger picture. So here are my 3 questions that were actually making me more afraid to try it. What if I make a wrong decision and not experience something to the fullest? If I do something now that will alter the way I can live the rest of my life, that's actually really scary. What if I do something now that will make me miss out on something completely? And what if I permanently change my future and not be able to experience or have something special happen? And yeah, those questions, even back in high school, I had in my mind. I knew that whatever you do to your body does affect you permanently. So if I'm unable to think or process a situation, will I make a good financial decision that will affect my family for the rest of our life? What if I'm able to understand or learn new things? That's really scary to me, because I want to be in control. I want to be able to do something that's going to be really great. So preventing that from happening is actually a pretty great fear. So what actually happens in your body, right? We actually don't know this. Whenever you take something, do something, think a certain way, it actually changes the pathways and the wiring in your body. So I want to run through just a little bit to give you an idea of what some of the things actually do. So this is a drug in that form, probably not most familiar to all of you. More differently, if you look like this, those are cannabis plants. most of you know that marijuana or pot. Now, as common as it is in a lot of places, again, we all know sort of the effects of what happens, but what is it actually doing in the body? And here's sort of little tidbits. I'll put it a couple of times. When you take the drug, that chemical that is on the picture, that is the THC chemical, which is one of many of the cannabis plants, right? What they do for the first 4 hours, and then later, because they're stored in your body, they block all your normal nervous pathways, and increase just one. So the feeling that you feel is the dopamine pathway, the joy pathway gets upregulated, but then it shuts down everything else. So because you're unable to use your other pathways, you can actually not function in a normal way. You can't respond to emotion, and you can't correctly respond to situations because those pathways aren't firing. So you affect your motor skills, learning skills, pain, appetite, and fertility. And in chronic use, you actually block the oxygen, sugar, and blood to the brain. So every time, right, you fire this pathway and you're shutting down the others, that will become permanently. So you're permanently going to not be able to make a decision or learn anything. So I just have a sort of really pretty quick and easy visual, just to give you an idea of what that looks like. So if you look at the top picture, so that's a neuron with the little red dots again, right? Those are neurotransmitters in your normal pathway, meaning if you need to walk or move or solve a problem or learn a new skill, that's the top, the little red dots that get released. When they get released in the right amount, and I'm going to click on this here so you can see it. All right, here's what happens. They get released, you can see 2 of those bubbles got released. 3 of the blue little dots are going to enter and release 1 yellow bubble dot, and that's a dopamine, and that makes you respond correctly to a situation, right? It's the appropriate level. So if you wire this pathway over and over again, that makes you be able to do and respond and think and experience joy, right, all at the same time. If, right, you add the cannabis, here's what that does. THC chemical actually blocks the first neuron. So instead of 2 red dot bubbles, you release 1. That only releases 1 blue one, right, which releases 2 yellow ones, which makes you dopamine go higher, but it also leaves you less dopamine back in the bubble, right? So you're left with 2, and all the other red dots are now blocked from entering. So the more you do that, the more permanent this will become, and your red dots are not able to function, and you can't actually fire this pathway again. So most all chemicals work with that. Here's another one. Probably not familiar in this form either. That's the plant, right? And that's the drug. The opioids, or heroin, and oxycodone in this case, were used originally and are still in some cases as painkillers. And they're good as painkillers because they shut off your central nervous system, which is great if you have literally a lot of pain and you can't handle it, to shut off your nervous system. The bad part, it shuts off your central nervous system. So in these drugs, there's no addiction period at all. What's happening here, you are releasing such an enormous amount of dopamine to a point where your brain is unable to get it back. So you literally cannot function without the drug again. So the first time you take it is the first time the brain needs it. So you can't, there's no way of like trying it safely and backing off of it. Right? So what you're doing, basically on a much more amped level, you're directly changing and shutting off the neurons. So your nervous system completely can't function, and you decrease any amount of normal response to outside situations, and including pain, so you are actually unable to be present in the time, ever. You have no idea what's going on in terms of you're not taking in any memories at all. Right? So, and this is one of the highest level of drug-related deaths too. All right, and one more plant that is commonly used is cocaine. And again, these are all basically interfering the same pathway in a different way. This is the powerful stimulant that gives you temporary sense of euphoria, mental alert, right? And it does that, again, by blocking all those neurons that normally would make you feel hungry and normally would make you feel happy. And this is the most frequently reported drug-related death in the US. And because the nervous system is actually in control of the blood vessels, by turning off all of these pathways, it shuts down your blood vessels, which disables your blood from being able to travel from and to your heart. So the number one death is actually related to the cardiac arrest, not the actual drug itself. So your heart stops beating, and you are not able to get oxygen to the rest of your body. This drug, methamphetamine, is not used medically at all, right? This is completely synthetic. This was made in the lab. This is your Molly and your ecstasy. And this is the most dangerous and the most permanently damaging drugs out of all of them. It releases dopamine and neurotransmitters. Now, here's, and I'm going to run through it real quick. I want to show you. This is the most dangerous one because it actually permanently changes the brain's ability to learn and regulate emotion and problem solve. And because it basically elevates all of the pathways, all of the neurons are overfiring, which means your temperature goes up, makes your liver, kidney, and heart actually starts shutting down. And again, just sort of really quick. The permanent use of this, basically, just want to show you. So the purple dots is again normal. So with ecstasy or Molly, what it's doing is actually reversing the way your nervous system works. So instead of taking those purple dots back in, like normally is supposed to happen, you release more of them out. So it completely reverses the effect of the nervous system. And if you keep doing it, so here's a long-term effect. Those purple dots actually get broken down by your body, and you don't make any new ones. So you are literally left with a lot less neurotransmitters permanently, and you can never refire it again. All right? Well, let's do this up really. Adderall, I threw that in here. Again, it is commonly used to treat ADHD. So as with anything, I'll say this now because some of these, we know that there's legalizing marijuana and all of that, which is true. And in cannabis, the chemical they're legalizing is not THC. It's actually a different chemical. And if and when there's a medical reason, which there is a medical reason to use some of these, but those medical reasons usually come from your body's inability to make something that it needs. So the drugs are used in a way to help rebalance that. That would be helpful. However, to a healthy body that taking all this, it will throw everything off balance. So Adderall is actually very similar to that in what it does to the neurons. And again, if used in a body that doesn't need this chemical, it will permanently damage that as well. So what's the alternative? Real quick, how do we create a joy pathway that's normal and actually long-term? Because it will determine what you do. And really, you've heard some of these, but it's really true. The way you think and the way you feel actually fires the pathways. So the term high on life, right, actually gives you that same neuron release as the drugs do. They just do it in a more permanent way. So change your view. So what does it mean? It just really means how you respond to situations. If you do feel like joy is left, and if there's a depression and there's anger and fear, you can refire it by just saying, well, we lost the game, and that sucked, so do I go home all angry and bitter, or do you look at it as, we lost the game, but my teammates played well, I grew closer with them, we were vulnerable together, we worked hard, and that's important, whatever the score was. So that is in your power. So the way you think and the way you build relationships refires the pathways that you need. And again, whatever ones you make now will permanently remain. Right? So if the only pathways you're doing are the drug ones, that's the one that you can get. Give your body the right building blocks. Your body actually needs to make these chemicals. Eat well. Exercise. It releases the same chemicals in a long-term way. Again, these are all long-term solutions. Retrain your responses to setbacks and letdowns. Again, think of a situation differently. Tell your friends, right, how to positively think about it. Be that person for them. By thinking differently, you can literally change your body's biochemistry. So I just have 2 slides a little late here. I'm going to fire this video, just basically one of those